Hey friends, welcome to The Writer's Journey. I'm your host, Lauren Moore, and with me is the radiant Kalene Williams and the resplendent Steve Bollier. We're three authors on a journey to learn more with you, the audience, so thank you for joining us. Tonight's guest is a fantasy author best known for his Demon War saga and the Legend of Drits, and Vector Prime, the first novel in the Star Wars The New Jedi Order series. He has sold more than 15 million copies of his books in the United States alone, and 22 of his titles have been New York Times bestsellers. Tonight, he's taking a little time off from spinning yarns to answer all of your burning questions, all 55 of you. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited. Salvatore, thanks for joining us tonight.
Good to be here. Whoa! But how come I'm not radiant or resplendent?
Radiant, splendid.
Resplendent.
She makes us sound so delicious. It's amazing.
Bob, when we announce you, it's like a king has entered the room with all of the different, accomplishments and.
Yeah, that's how it works,
man. Incredible.
It means I'm old at this point.
Honestly, I looked up at the stars to pick your adjectives, and now that Bob's actually here, like my words are just kind of like falling out my thing.
Benevolent Bob, bombastic Bob.
To answer all of our questions. So, folks in the chat, if you have questions, pop them in. We will try to get to as many of them tonight as we possibly can. And our first question is from Maya Cleve. She asks, what's it like writing such an iconic character just for so many years?
Boy, 33 years now? Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing. And when I started, he was supposed to be a sidekick character, no big deal. And I had to kind of get them to let me do it because they weren't even going to let me do it. And he just caught on. And there's no magic sauce. I think I know why in retrospect he's done well. The character's become friends with so many people. I'll put it that way. But it's strange. It's nothing I ever expected. I just wanted to write a book and get my name in the bookstore. I was working in finance.
That is probably the best reason ever. Just want to write a book and make it good. Get it out there.
Well, I had written a book back in 1983, 82, 83. And I wrote it longhand in a spiral, in a ring binder.
Yes.
And by candlelight, while playing Fleetwood Mac's Tusk album, after coming home from bouncing in the local nightclubs, because that was my job to get me through college. And I didn't write it to get published. I just wrote it because I wanted something I could give to my kids if I had kids, who would give it to my grandkids if I had grandkids, and they'd know something about, their grandfather, so I wouldn't just be another number, And so when it finally happened, and I got the chance to jump in and write a book in the Forgotten Realms through that book. I had submitted that book, and the editor said, we don't have any room on the schedule for anything but Forgotten Realms books. Will you write one of those? And I said, what are the Forgotten Realms? They weren't out yet, and there was no internet. This was 1987. To me, it was just get it done and get, now I've accomplished, I've checked something off the bucket list. But then to see the reaction and to see how big it's gotten with this character in particular. I remember when I wrote the first book, and we thought it was just a one-off, and then they said, let's do another one. I wrote the second book, and we thought it was a one-off, and let's do one more. And I finished it with the Halfling's Gem. And they said, tie up everything in the Halfling's Gem because people are tired of these characters. So I did. And then they came back to me and said, you know what? We're getting a lot of letters about this character. Can you maybe tell us where he came from with a prequel trilogy? And that's how it happened. And that's when I quit my job, signed up for 3 new books, and I've been retired since. That was 1990.
I think I speak for almost everybody in this chat when I say that Crystal Shard is the reason we started reading books, or as a writer, it's the reason I started writing books, 100%. And I see that constantly, that the Crystal Shard, Icewind Dale trilogy was the reason that I got into what I do. So I think I speak for everyone when I say thank you so much for those books, man. Amazing books.
It's just been a journey, and I never expected it. And I'm just thrilled that I'm kind of blown away. I write for different reasons than I publish. I write because this is how I make sense out of the world. And I publish because they'll pay me money. So I not have to go to work all day and I can write. And, but it's become so much more than that over the years. I've made so many friends through the books. Like people emailing me, PMing me, first writing letters, meeting people at conventions. And it's just expanding. But at that same time that happens, it becomes almost, it's kind of weird because you're being let into somebody else's life through your work. And so I'll hear from somebody that says, I just did 2 tours in Afghanistan and these books helped me get through the day. One guy said to me, it helped me forget what I had to do that day and not think about what I was going to have to do tomorrow. And you get letters from people, like one of the earliest letters before the internet, early 90s, I got a letter from a guy whose ex-wife had been in a car accident. She was in a coma. And so he and her new boyfriend and her father were all reading my books to her because these were her favorite books. And you hear stories like this. Or someone will write to a kid will write to me and say, I didn't have any friends in high school and I found these characters. Or I never read a book until, and now I'm reading everything. And I love those because that was me with Tolkien. I had stopped reading by the time I got to college until my sister gave me those books. So it's kind of a mind-blowing, always surreal experience. And I never take it for granted. And I never, I never for 1 minute. I mean, I complain, but nobody wants to hear it anyway. So I complain kind of quietly to myself.
Did you ever figure out what it is about your characters or the story that really resonates with people like that?
I think Drits resonates for a lot of different reasons. Primarily as he's the classic outcast hero, right? I mean, nobody understands him. And you remember when I started writing these books, the fantasy audience was much younger. And mostly male. It's a way better audience now. It's a way better genre now. But that was, if you went to one of my book signings in 1989, you might see 25 people there, and there'd be 20 teenage boys and the 5 moms who drove them. It's very different now. Now my book signings are like Fleetwood Mac concerts. You've got a grandfather with his son and his granddaughter, and they're all reading the book together, which is incredibly heartwarming, by the way. But I don't know. It's one of those things where, for some reason, I think I wanted to write buddy fantasy. I think Fritz Leiber was Fritz Lieber. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but Fritz Leiber, Fafhrd and Grey Mouser books. I think that was a big influence on me because I love buddy fantasy. And the idea of going down the road of adventure, I think, is a big part of why people kind of glommed onto the Companions of the Hall and look through their eyes to go on these adventures, right? Drits in particular, I think it's because so many people are misunderstood. And so many people are judged for things other than the content of their characters, so to speak. With Drits, the people look at him and they make assumptions because of things that have nothing to do with him. And I think people feel that way all the time, particularly when you're in high school, right? Who in high school feels comfortable? So maybe that's it. Maybe he's just fun.
I'm reading your most recent book, and that kind of gives his backstory, where he was born, where he came from, and that's part of what he has to deal with too. And
Relentless and the new one.
Relentless, yes.
Yeah, it takes place. A lot of that story takes place alongside Homeland. Yeah.
To get into that one, but we have so many chat questions.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, let's go. I'll be short-winded.
First one, Echo 7. First question: is that Bruner's axe?
That over there? No, that's something my nephew gave me for Christmas, and I just thought it looked cool, so I put it up on the wall. But there's no notches in that yet. But if they get me angry, we'll and next to that is the Keith Parkinson cover for Mortalis, which is really special. My 4th Demon Wars book, and I finally got the amazing Keith Parkinson. Finally, did me did a cover for me. It was wonderful.
Nathaniel Blackstone asks, do you have any favorite authors who describe melee combat particularly well? You're asking the king of melee combat. Like, what is that question? He reads himself. It's amazing.
No, there's a few, actually. I do think when I started writing detailed combat scenes, and I think this is a big reason why the books worked. I don't think that was being done a lot in fantasy books. I remember reading Wish Song of Shannara, and I love Terry. Terry's one of my dearest friends in the world, and I've been yelling at him for the last 29 years, I think I've known him, saying, why didn't you show me that fight between Garrett Jax and the Daemon? Garrett Jax was the coolest character I'd ever read. And so I didn't shy from that. And, I said earlier I was a bouncer. We had a little boxing club in high school. I played hockey all my life. And I'm a sports fan. I watch sports. I love the movement of human bodies. When people know what they're doing. I mean, I could sit there and watch Torval and Dean dance the bolero at the Olympics over and over and over again, right? It's beautiful to me. So I pay attention. I grew up watching Ali Frazier, right? And I just watching, if you watch it enough, you begin to understand the level of physical intelligence involved and the balance. So I just go with that. I want to see it. I want to read it. Therefore, I write it. But as far as other authors, David Gemmell writes great battle scenes. Matt Stover, Heroes Die. He's brutal. He's a knife fighter too. Takes knife fight. Those are some of the best battle scenes I've ever read. Paul Kemp, I think, does a great job with it. Troy Denning does exceptionally well on larger scale battle scenes. And I just started a book. Do I have it here? My wife hid it on me. She didn't want anyone's books but mine, I guess, around.
Well, someone had called you. What was it? Oh, man, I should have had it. No, I'm not going to find it. Sorry. I just interrupted you.
Just later, take notes.
Yeah. Well, anyway. So, yeah, I mean, there are a few now. I don't think that was a big thing in fantasy.
I'm curious, what book were you going to say? Do you remember? Do you know the name? You just started reading.
Oh, I don't want to get the name wrong.
I'm going to read whatever you're reading.
Hold on 1 second. We have Google.
That's fair.
And I just want to
your Artemis Entreri, your Jarl Axel fights. I think some of the beauty of your fights are that the plot continues forward the entire time that the battles are happening.
I got it. I was right. It was Rage of Dragons. Evan Winter.
Oh yeah. Yep. Evan Winter.
He's good. It's a good book.
And it's brutal. Yeah.
Very
awesome.
well. So there you go. I mean, and I think you see it more now, right? I think you see it more now. Hopefully, my success had something to do with that.
I think it did.
All right. Oh, clicking on each other.
What is the best cosplay of one of your characters you've ever seen in person?
Oh, there's been a few. I've seen some Drits that have been amazing. There was a group in Atlanta called the Darkened Facade who did the Drow. It was amazing. But having said that, that's become problematic now for entirely different reasons. And so, yeah.
People need to wear masks.
Well, yeah, no, because black skin. The dark elves were back then, coal black, ebon black. And you just can't do that anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Blackface.
All right. So moving on. William Perry.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Other than Drits.
No, I don't. Let me just get something in here on this.
Okay.
I'm not going to cause any controversy. I promise. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. What I'm saying, the only thing that was important to me about Drits Duorden is that he could be identified as the other on site. Okay? Because I never even thought of it in those terms because they were elves, right? But look, if things cause problems for people, fix them and move on.
Yeah.
And I've seen some incredible drow outfits, especially some of the women wearing the priestess outfits, the lace gowns with the spiders and stuff. It's pretty cool. And now they've got a Drits and Cadbury Halloween costume.
I almost bought it today, and I decided I'd look too horrible in it.
Yeah.
You're echoing Steve.
Why would you look too horrible in it?
Because Drits does not have a beard at all, and he's not bald. And
So dye the beard red and be Bruner.
Problem solved. Problem solved. All right. So, who is your favorite character other than Drits?
Oh boy, good guy, bad guy, or comedy relief?
All of the above. Why not? Let's do it.
Okay, good guy, Owlin, good gal, in Child of a Mad God. I love that character. She's based on a few things, most notably Anne Boleyn from history, who I adore. I watched The Tudors with Natalie Dormer playing Anne Boleyn, and she was brilliant in it. And that's a character that's always captivated me. So I did Owlin as this feisty little witch, and she's amazing. So Owlin for good guy, bad guy, Marcello Dianero from Demon Wars, without a doubt. Well, I can't say without a doubt because Intrari's kind of delicious too. But Dianero is great because he thinks he's doing well. He thinks he's a hero, and he's the biggest dirtbag ever. And for comedy relief, it's probably a three-way battle royale between Thibbledorf Puent, the battle-raging dwarf, Pickled Boulder Shoulder, the druid dwarf, or Oliver de Barros from the Crimson Shadow series, who I adore. Oliver is a cross between Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride and the little French guy on the wall in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
I love Oliver.
Well, speaking about dwarves, Matt Kissling asks, I love the way you write dwarves, but which do you prefer to write, Forgotten Realms dwarves or your own Powries from Demon Wars?
Yeah, the Powries. Let me explain the Powries for people who haven't read Demon Wars. They're bloody cap dwarves, and they have these magical berets that get more magical because they dip them in the blood of their victims. And they're pretty cool. They're vicious little buggers.
That's awesome.
I love the Powries, but the dwarves in the realms have actually been major characters in the book. So I got to go with those because they just, Bruner, Puent, Athergate, Fist and Fury. There's just so many of them. And I got to go with the dwarves.
Your Gutbusters were a huge. Oh, I'm echoing again. I'm sorry.
Such an echoer, man. You're so excited.
I am. Your Gutbusters were a huge inspiration in the dwarves in my series. Huge. I mean,
Puent, baby.
Yeah. Brilliant characters.
Right. Pat Wright also says, thank you for so many years of writing great books. Dustin Craig says, you mentioned the Forest of Myr in your book, Streams of Silver, with the Forest of Myr being filled with other renegade drow and just being able to live so long. Do you have any plans to introduce Faerun, the surface drow god, into the Drits series? My second question is, how can I get a signed copy of one of your books?
Oh,
second question first. It's really easy. Just go to rasalvastore.com. My wife's online bookstore. Yes, that's the best dad joke ever. My wife said she was doing a store. I said, oh, I got a name for you. And then they all my kids and her all kind of groaned at me and walked away. And then she used it.
It's brilliant.
So go to rasalvastore.com. We got all the books. You get them signed. You can get them personalized. Just don't put 700 words in it for me to personalize in this little page. But I mean, like when Relentless came out, we call them e-signings, where you just pre-order the book and who you want it signed to. And when we get them from the distributor, I sign them. We did like 1,500 of them out of here. Which was, hurt. Yeah.
That's kind of cramp.
But it's pretty cool. And by the way, the term e-signing, I own the copyright on that term. I always get telling people that. 1998, my brother got sick and he couldn't work anymore. He had cancer. He couldn't work anymore. So I started a company with my gaming group called Seven Swords, and we were doing things like modules. We did the Accursed Tower for Wizards of the Coast, and we did like the bot responses and Quake ID Arena. So we did we were doing these weird little side jobs, and I said, we should sell books, and but what would be the hook? And so I said, people should order them from us and I'll sign them. So we called it e-signing and I copyrighted the term. But the only reason I copyrighted the term is that so no company could get it and not let other people use it. Yeah. So if you want to do an e-signing, please do. Don't even give me credit. Go ahead and do it. Use the word. I don't care. But I just think it's cool that I own the term e-signing. be on Trivial Pursuit or on Jeopardy someday. And now the first question about the forest. You're talking about the Forest of Mir and Veyron and all these things, but the Forgotten Realms just keeps changing, and I don't even know what's going on in half of that stuff anymore. Also, I just finished Relentless, and the series, that trilogy is over. So, we'll see what happens. But it's hard for me because people say to me things like, are we ever going to see Blingdenstone again, right? Because they like Belwar Disengulp, the Deep Gnome. But then the game designers went and moved it, and I didn't even know about it. And so you don't know. I create things, but then it goes into the mill, right? And they have 87,000 other people working on 87,000 other products, and we build off each other. It's the way Shared World works. So, we shall see. I do have plans. Let's see if they come to fruition.
But we do get a brand new Demon Wars trilogy?
Yeah.
Amazing. Super cool.
They I don't know why they wanted to announce it so quickly, but they did. They said, we do an interview. We want to announce it on Tor.com. Okay. So why are you announcing it? It's like coming out in early 2023. But they wanted to announce it.
Get the knowledge now, man.
Well, speaking of plans, Jonah asks, is there any intention of moving Drits to another medium other than video games?
I don't know.
Maybe.
I have no say. No, I have no say. They don't even have to tell me. I mean, I think they want to. I think they've wanted to for a while. I think there has been interest several times over the last 20 plus years, but nothing's happened. I have nothing to report on it, and it's not my call. I don't own the realms. Hasbro owns the realms. Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast.
Like Hasbro about it.
Bug Hasbro about it. If they do it, that'd be great. If they do it well,
it's always the risk.
We won't read into that.
Well, I hope that if they do it, I'll be involved. If they ever get around to, I hope I'll be alive.
All right, actual question. When are we getting a Jarl Axel series?
Oh, great question. 2002.
That's right.
That's
right. The Cell Swords. She said, to be fair, there was the addendum. If it already exists, I apologize. That was a great,
Servant of the Shard
series. Promise
of the Witch King, and Road of the Patriarch. Jarl Axel and Trari on the road. And I love that series.
That's one of my favorite. If you haven't read it,
so much fun. Plus, there's a whole bunch of Jarl Axel and Trari stories in the collected stories of the Legend of Drits, the anthology that I did. Did you ever hear about the audio on that?
Yeah, I listened to all of it. It's amazing. Michael Chiklis, Will Wheaton.
Yeah, you know how I found out about that? Because they were trying to surprise me. Audible decided they were going to take all these stories I'd written about Drits and get all these people you wouldn't expect to read them.
And that was true.
So they got some you would expect, right? Felicia Day did one, and Will Wheaton did one, but then so my wife is, hey Bob, did you see this? And she comes out and she's got her laptop in her hand and she's reading a blog by Ice-T.
He did a good job.
He said he went into the studio and he's like, what is this? And I'm not going to start swearing on your blog. But what is this? How do you pronounce that? I don't know how to pronounce this. Blah, 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 blah. And he's going on and on and on and on. But then he starts talking about flying horses and talking swords. And I went, that's my story.
That's funny.
What the heck? And so I called in and I found that sure as heck, they got Ice-T, they got Weird Al, David Duchovny, Melissa Roche. They each did one of the stories. But a lot of those stories were Jarl Axel and Trari as well. So
I just got a question texted to me. Sorry, I'm just going to accept a text. Are you going to do any Jarl Axel origin stories at any point in the future?
Origin stories? I'm not sure, but in the 3 books I just did, I go back in time to Jarl Axel and Zaknafein as young drow and Menzo Baranzan before Drits was born.
In the Generation series?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right.
Those books are all 4 sections.
Right.
And the first section and the third section of each book takes place Well, the first book, it takes place way before Drits was born, hundreds of years before Drits was born, when Jarl Axel and Zaknafein first meet. And then the second book is kind of moving up, and it comes up kind of right before he was born, if I remember right. And then the third book kind of goes along with what they're doing while Drits is growing up. It tells this kind of side stories of anguished father and his friend helping him out.
I had the arcs of Timeless, and I was so confused for the first, 70 pages. I'm like, so where is Drizzt?
Oh, you mean the date that I put at the beginning of each section didn't help you, huh?
No.
It only says,
I know. I went back. I went back. I was so excited. I just went right into it.
Me up. I remember when one of my books came out, there were two bookstores in my mall. There was a Walden Books and a Pilgrim Books.
Yeah.
And the guy, I was over at Walden Books signing a couple of the stock that they had. And this guy comes in and he says, "Oh, you have it. Thank God. I was just over at Pilgrim and they don't have it." And I was like, "Oh, I better go look at that." Because, the book had just come out. And you got to be careful about distribution. This is back like 1991 or something. And I go over to Pilgrim Books and I'm like, "Hey, I just saw a guy who ran over the wall and said you didn't have my new book. Is something wrong?" And they go, "What do you mean? We have a full display." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They put it right up at the front of the store. The guy says, "No, I'm not so surprised because I've had about 3 people ask me about that. They come walking in and they walk right by that stack of books and go to the fantasy section before they start looking." And I guess they do it when they're reading too, huh?
Hey, just know that for me, it was sheer excitement of a new R.A. Salvatore book.
I'm sure.
All right. Well, Bob, I had a question put to me that I swore I would ask you. This is from Nick Cole. He's the author of the Galaxy's Edge series.
Yeah, I know Nick.
I'd like to know, would you like to play D&D with him live with James S.M. Ward?
Jim?
Jim, yeah, one of the Dungeons and Dragons.
Hey,
I know Jim.
I play on it too, and I'm begging you to come play with us.
Yeah, probably not.
Oh,
I'm very private in my gaming. I've done a couple that have been broadcast. I did a game with Larry Elmore and Ed Greenwood that Chris Perkins ran at Gen Con for charity. And the only reason I did it is because they didn't tell me until I got to Gen Con, and then I was kind of committed because I'm very private with my gaming. But I'll consider it.
Yeah.
But
well, if you ever decide to pull back the curtain a little bit and play with the guys, they would love to have you. We have so many questions.
So many questions. There's still questions coming through. If you don't get the question, I'm so sorry. Actually, yeah, I'm going to hit the spotlight real quick. And then if we don't get to your question, I am so sorry. There's probably like 100 questions right now. Anyway, okay. Spotlight. Today's spotlight is on Relentless, a Drits novel by R.A. Salvatore.
Don't ask me questions of my books. I won't remember them.
The epic conclusion to the long-awaited trilogy, featuring one of the most beloved characters in all of fantasy, Drits Do'Urden. A rollicking tale of life, death, intrigue, magic, danger, and the timeless bonds of family and friendship from New York Times best-selling author R.A. Salvatore. Displaced in time and unexpectedly reunited with his son Drits Do'Urden, Zaknafein has overcome the prejudices ingrained in him as a drow warrior to help his son battle the ambitious Spider Queen and stem the tide of darkness that has been unleashed upon the Forgotten Realms. Of course, my birds and dogs start to go nuts.
That's chaos.
Your birds and dogs. It was awesome.
I know. No,
like screams of hell.
Zaknafein has endured the most difficult battles. Survival has come at a terrible cost, and the fight is far from over. Facing demons and driders, Zaknafein carries the entire weight of Menzoberran. Oh God, I forget it. Surrounding
really good. Very good. Very good.
Gumpagin on his shoulders once more. But the chances of survival for him and his old friend and mercenary Jarl Axel look bleak. Trapped in a desperate and seemingly hopeless situation, the legendary warriors must reach deep inside themselves to face the impossible. While the burdens Zaknafein bears are more than enough for one of Menzoberran's greatest warriors, fate holds further challenges. When circumstances take an unexpected turn, Zaknafein discovers he must not only conquer the darkness, but learn to accept the uncontrollable, life itself. The stakes have never been higher for R.A. Salvatore's most beloved creations in this final volume of his latest best-selling trilogy, begun with Timeless and Boundless, a story of brave heroes filled with dangerous thrills. Relentless also considers eternal questions about morality, purpose, sacrifice, and the definition of harmony. Exciting, imaginative, and thought-provoking, it takes fans on an action-packed ride that will challenge their assumptions and leave them breathless and satisfied. Click
Of
now.
Doom.
Was that your Audible edition?
I just like the link.
Kalen's great. She's great. Nerd.
Breathless, is that the title of the next one? If I do another one, it'd probably have to be Endless at that point.
Endless. Yeah, that'd be good.
That was good, though. I love how they always have to say rollicking. It's like they have 700 words that they have on the side they have to pull out whenever they do those things. It's pretty cool.
We must include these words.
That's on an interesting point about Zacathain, though. When he had to overcome his prejudices. I got a lot of grief for that. It was really cool. But you said you had questions, so I won't get off track yet. Go ahead.
All
Well,
right.
one question you need to know is, what's your favorite D&D class of all time?
Oh, the monks. Well, first edition, I really like when characters level up that you get new things, that things change. And the first edition monk was like that. Of course, you had to hide for the first 6 levels because you were AC 10, then 9, then 8. But I was good at hiding, so I love monks. I love them so much I wrote Demon Wars, which is loaded with monks. But you know what I'm really liking in 5th edition? We just started playing 5th last year.
Fists of Fury.
No, what I really like are the clerics.
Yeah.
Cleric of Light is awesome. I really enjoy that. But
Plus, you wrote. Sorry.
Yeah, I write clerics.
You wrote one of the greatest clerics of all time.
He was supposed to be a psionicist. They wouldn't let me because they would take
Really?
psionics out of the game for 2nd edition.
Cataly was great. It was a
I liked
great
Castle
Mm-hmm.
with his yo-yo. That was fun, yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm back. When I was rolling, I had a cleric, and we're playing with a typically cruel DM who got even crueler when he's not in the room, so we can't punch him. And he wiped us again. And so I was going to roll a character. I said, all right, well, I'm going to play a cleric again. And I rolled the character, and I rolled 2 17s, 2 16s, a 15, and a 14. It was like insane. And you roll right on the screen, and roll 20. I did the formula for the 6 die, and boom, 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 it popped up, and I went, no, that's a monk. With those stats, I'm a monk. So I have a halfling monk.
Speaking about monks, John L. Monks asks, will you ever go back to Cleric Quintin?
Probably not. He's dead.
Hard to do.
I mean, I could see a short story or something about Catherley, who's still walking that circle around the spirit soaring to keep the Lich banished. I could see something like that, but going back to the series, I mean, that series in the Realms time took place 130 years ago, so that makes it hard when you're talking about humans.
Well, being able to touch on all those who might be dead. If you could spend a day as one of your characters, who would you choose?
Oh, probably Regis, because I wouldn't have to do anything.
just Shrimshaw all the time, all day long.
Fish.
Yep.
With no bait on the hook, just sit there on the beach. No, that's actually a pretty good question. A day is one of my characters. Have to be Jarl Axel. It'd have to be Jarl Axel, because if I was really Jarl Axel, I could just do whatever the heck I wanted.
Most epic character.
Can we do it? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
That. I can't talk.
Calvin Williams asks, do you have an idea of where you want to go next after Tale of the Coven? Oh my god. Bodlan Ranger Training, another prequel, but this time explore with these letters.
Jokanai.
Oh, you're right.
The Jokanai are rock. They are. People keep saying, you got to go back because the bad guys. And I'm like, who are the bad guys? And they said the Jokanai. And I said, why are the Jokanai the bad guys? Well, they came in and they did this. I said, well, if the Jokanai are the bad guys in that, doesn't that make Bruno the bad guy for taking over Mithril Hall again? Huh? Yeah, oh, I love the Jokanai. But where am I going to go next? I have to know where I'm going to go next. I just signed a book deal.
Boom.
So basically, I left the Coven leaves, without giving away spoilers, the Coven leaves the world in a really interesting place, completely different than it was when I started the Demon Wars series. The ancient kingdoms even are very different because of what happens in the Coven trilogy. And so the way the place the world is left in allows all new stories to go, because I don't want to do anything that it's like a sequel to Song of the Risen God, the third book in the Coven, because for one thing, I'm with a different publisher. I'm with Saga, Simon & Schuster now. And for another thing, I always like to write the Demon Wars series as standalones. So you can read the 7 books of the original Demon Wars saga, which builds the world. I was done with TSR when I started writing those, and I built my fantasy world with the gemstone magic system and the monks and all the societies and the different cultures. And then I went back to the world and I set a trilogy, a 4-book series. It was supposed to be 1, but then I liked the character so much I wrote a trilogy to follow that called The Saga of the First King, beginning with the book The Highwayman, that take place like 600-700 years before, when the Abelican Church is first being formed in that world, which was such a seminal importance to that world, and about this character that I adored. Because I wanted to write more personal stories when I went back to the world. So I wrote about the Highwayman. And then I went back and did the Coven, which takes place alongside the end of the Demon Wars 7-book series, and it kind of goes forward about 20 years beyond that. But it takes place in an entirely different part of the world. And there's like one character to tie it back to the other series, and you don't even know that he ties it back. So you could read the Coven, the trilogy, without ever reading the other 11 books in that world. You could read the 4 books of the Highwayman without reading the other 10 books in that world. And that's how I like to keep it. And I'll be doing that again. But I want to pick up the world where I left it, because the world where I left it just opens itself up to some really interesting stories for me. And I won't get into too many spoilers, but there is one character from the Coven series that I want back without a doubt, and she'll be there.
Oh, we got real taste, is she?
No, it's one of my favorite characters. I already named her.
Oh,
I adore that character, and I want her back. And now magic is different in the world even. So that's going to change so much about her and about what she can do and how they have to accomplish things. And when I write books, I try to parallel them with history, our history. Not exactly, but, if you've read Game of Thrones and you know about the 100 Years' War, you kind of, the War of the Roses, you kind of see some similarities, because history rhymes, culture rhymes. And where this world is left would lead me to one of my favorite time periods in history, just because of the situation of who's conquered who and how they're getting along and all the rest of it. So,
which time period are we allowed to know, or is that too much of a spoiler?
Well, I won't say much about it, but Avastia there's a lot of Yars thrown.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that's
delicious.
Yeah, it's time for some free boating.
Author Richard Fox asked the question, is there a place in epic fantasy for a standalone book, or do you think it has to be a series these days?
Well, I think it depends. You're going to sell it to a publisher, they're probably going to want a series, because breaking an author out is next to impossible with all the movies out there. So it doesn't have to be a series. If it's an exceptional book and you've got the right story and you're telling a story that hits an editor a certain way, they'll go with it. But if it's when you go to publishers, they want trilogies. Yeah. They want or more. They know that it's going to take them years to build you, and they know that it's hard to get a book on the shelves and keep it on the shelves for any length of time, unless you've got another book coming out to back it up. So, but of course, today most authors are self-publishing, right? If you're self-publishing, you do any dang thing you want.
Yep.
All right. So I've seen. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I've seen this come up like 4 times already. Fenny58 is desperate to know the answer to this question. Dinin, Why did you bring him back, and will you kill him again? Bum, bum, bum. There's your...
Bring him back. Told you, I always forget what's in my books.
Well, he asked it so many times. I'm like, I have to click this thing. This dude is desperate to know. So I tried, funny. I tried.
What I did, the Generations Trilogy. All right, let me back up. When I wrote Hero, which was the last book of the Homecoming trilogy, I thought that was the end because Wizards was done doing books. And if Hero had been the end of Drits, then that would have been a fitting end. He met Loth. She tried to coax him over, and he gave her the middle finger and got away with it, basically. So that would have been a good end for the Drits series. And I thought it was over because Wizards, they weren't doing books anymore. And that's why I signed up to do the Coven. Okay? Because I wanted to go back to my Demon Wars world. And then it occurred to me that, you know what? I'll bet they might be interested in doing this. And my agent and I went to them with a proposal. And for me to basically license Drits, and they would still have control. They would still be, they would approve outlines. They know I'm a team player. They know if they have things they want in the books, I'll put them in the books to go along with the world. With the computer games that are coming out and all the rest of it. And these people have been like family to me for over 20 years. And we agreed and we came to terms, and I got to do Generations. But now I had, in a way, finished Drit's story.
Right.
The Legend of Drits, it's a complete circle from Homeland to Hero. But that didn't mean I was done, because there were other things I needed to get out there. In this case, about the Drow elves. Because the Drow to me were always about Loth. And I wanted to make it clear that Drits wasn't unique. That this was a society that was held captive by tradition and a demon queen. And everybody there pretty much hated her, but couldn't say it. And many of them hated the society and the structure. But what are you going to do? You're in the Underdark. Where are you going? The only thing unique about Drits is he left and lived. Other ones who left never got very far in the Underdark before something killed them, because that's the Underdark. So the Generations Trilogy gave me the ability to do that. Plus, I wanted to tell about Jarl Axel getting it. And it got me to follow those stories. But what they're talking about, what she's talking about in this question with Now Dinane, which was his original name, and they made me change it because they don't know anything about names. Well, I'm serious. They made me change Dag Nabbit, and that's the best dwarf name ever, damn it. But the ultimate, the end of Relentless throws the Forgotten Realms, the Drow of the Forgotten Realms, on their head on purpose. The ultimate heresy is committed, and part of what the question is goes along with the ultimate heresy, if you will. And it just leaves so much hope and promise for what could happen now for people like Drits, for people like Jarl Axel, who never, ever thought Loth was worth a damn. Never mind worship. So I felt that was an important trilogy, and I thought it was really fitting that Relentless came out at the time it did. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do going further, and I don't know if I'm doing anything. And if I was, I wouldn't tell you anyway. So,
Yeah.
Well, that canceled out about half the questions asking if we're going to get a Bedweir story, if we're going to get more Spear Wielder's Tale, which Spear Wielder's was one of my favorite trilogies you've done. I loved every second of that.
The Corona series, there's questions about that too.
Yeah, basically all your series, all the people.
I did the 3 books of Innis IL. My first book was a book called Echoes of the Fourth Magic, the one I wrote longhand. I did the Spear Wielder's Tales, which is kind of autobiographical. but I wasn't kidnapped by a hobbit. I was kidnapped. I mean, by a leprechaun. I was kidnapped by a hobbit. It's kind of allegorical in me discovering fantasy and wanting to keep that imagination alive. And it's more fairy tale-ish. I wrote it kind of for my kids, but it's not really a kid's book. But it's a lot
fantasy.
of fun. It's amazing. A lot of fun. And I got Mickey McMickey the leprechaun running around, and it's a lot of fun. And then I have the Crimson Shadow books with Oliver de Barros, which are kind of my Three Musketeers trilogy. And Crimson Shadow was supposed to be Demon Wars, but I didn't have the time to develop the world. Again, it's a rollicking Three Musketeerish type adventure story. And then I have the Demon Wars books, which involves the 3 series: Demon Wars, the Highwayman Saga of the First King, and the Coven, and now the new one that was just announced. And I have my Never-Ending Forgotten Realms stories with Drits and the 5 books with Catherley. So
there are 48 Drits books. Is that accurate?
36 Drits
36.
Books, 4 Cleric books, and the Stone of Tomorrow, I think, which are the ones I wrote with my son, which I consider them Drits books, even though it kind of takes place alongside the Drits story. Mm-hmm. So did a lot of books.
Well, the characters, the worlds, everything, it sounds like they're co-owned intellectual property with you and Dungeons and Dragons or Forgotten Realms. Have you thought about?
No, they own them.
They own them. They own them.
They own them.
We had Michael J. Sullivan on last week, and he talked a lot about contracts and like who owns what. So my question is, are you able to talk about it? But are you thinking of doing your own thing, your own world, your own character story?
I did. That's Corona. That's Demon Wars.
Yeah, the Demon Wars. Yeah. Demon Wars are his.
That's the Saga of the First King. That's Crimson Shadow. That I have 3, 6, 9, 23 books. Yeah, there are 14 Demon Wars, 3 NSIL, 3 Crimson Shadow, 3 Spearwielders Tales. I own all those. And then I did a couple of Star Wars books, and I did the Tarzan book.
Did Gino write? I mean, I don't want you to answer this if it's gonna. But did Gino write most? Did you guys write that together? How did that process look for you guys?
Stone of Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah, Gino did most of the writing in that.
Yeah.
I just did a couple of the scenes like this. If you remember back to the Halfling's Gem, there's a scene where Brunner has to catch up to his friends who thought he was dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so he gets on a flaming chariot of Sustair, one of the D&D spells, and he flies and he sees the silver dragon, sees him, and is like, well, that's something you don't see every day, a dwarf flying around on a chariot. But he flies to catch up to them, and by the time he catches up to them, they're in a pitched battle with some pirates. I love pirates. I always go back.
Me too.
And Bruna takes that chariot, the chariot of flames, right down into the pirate ship, right? So I got to write that scene again in the Stowaway, the first book in the Stone of Tomorrow, only from the point of view of the kid who was in the hold of the ship next door, watching it happen. And so I insisted on writing some of the scenes, but Gino did most of the writing.
It was very good. He did a great job.
Fantastic series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Jeffrey H. Haskell asked, did you always intend for Artemis to be an anti-hero, or did that evolve?
I love this question. Artemis Entreri was thrown in at the end of the Crystal Shard because I liked writing the book and I hoped they'd give me another one. I had no idea who he was. I had the halfling walk into the town of Bryn Shander and see this guy there with a jeweled dagger and go, oh. And that's how Entreri came up. He was supposed to die in Streams of Silver. He was going to be the big bad guy in Streams of Silver once they gave me the book. And I was going to kill him, and he just won't die. And he won't let me kill him. And he just gets cooler and cooler and cooler. But he became one of the most important characters in the books to me for a couple of reasons. One, the redemption arc. Well, first of all, he's delicious to write, right? Because he's just a badass. But he's insecure and he's pissed because he got to be better than Drits. They become like mirror images of each other. And that rivalry that Drits is like, this is really stupid. And then Trace, no, I got to kill you. I have to. And it became so much fun. But when I wrote the Sellswords trilogy, I thought that was the end of Artemis Entreri's arc, because that was a redemption book. To me, in Road of the Patriarch, Artemis and Jarl Axel go to this chapel that's being run by a bunch of corrupt priests, and they basically burn it to the ground. And the surviving priest after, and Entreri goes up to him and says, okay, so we're going to leave now, and you can rebuild your chapel. and say the same things about it, but this time you better mean it, because if you pull this again, I'm coming back and I'm burning it down again. This time you're going to be in it. And I thought only Artemis and Treri could find redemption threatening the life of a priest. And it worked. And I thought that was it. But then I started getting the most incredible letters, because one of the other things I had done was do Artemis's backstory of his childhood, which was brutal, in the short stories that were in the collected stories, The Legend of Drits there. You know, I'd done them for like Dragon Magazine or anthologies that they had done over the years. And I was getting these incredible letters of people telling me their own stories of child abuse or alcoholism or whatever, and saying, you can't end in Treri now. I have to see him redeemed. I got like 20 or 30 letters echoing that. And I was like, well, I guess I can't end it like that. And so he just kept showing up, and I found a way to bring him back after the 100. Well, never get rid of him even with a 100-year leap, and he's still there. And I thought his role in the Generations trilogy, one of the things these are old books. If I'm spoiling it on you, you should have read them already. What happens when the phase rests, the bond between the lower planes and the Underdark weakens, is the demons come pouring through. And the Drow have trapped some, and they put them in phylacteries, necklaces, brooches, whatever, and they've sold them on the surface. So there's this demon army on the surface. But one of the demons that comes through isn't really a demon, it's conscience, as in your conscience, but personified. And this little girl, Sharon, goes around passing judgment. Not really passing judgment, just letting what you did, showing you what's going to happen to you. And I thought with Artemis and Treri, that worked so damn well. And that became the new redemption story for Artemis and Treri. And I just adored it. I just absolutely adored writing that part of the book. So he's still here.
That's powerful, because I think everyone can feel like that at some point. You know, we've all made big mistakes sometimes, and it's that conscience that pricks you. But hopefully that can spur you on to become someone better than who you are now.
Well, I was raised Catholic, and the whole shtick of the Catholic Church is redemption. And, you know, even though I've kind of left that behind, I figure that's a really important thing. Because if you don't believe in redemption, then you're without hope. You made a mistake, oh, it's over. I made a mistake. That's not, people make mistakes all the time.
Yeah. Preach.
Oh.
All right, speaking of preaching to the authors, we love this question. Steel Dad Sambo asks, when planning a story arc or a character arc, what are the most important elements of your process?
Stories are easy. Story arcs, because I don't really plan them. I have to do an outline, or they won't send me a check, so I do an outline.
Are you a pantser?
I'm a total pantser. I don't
know.
Yes. Next page.
Pantsers unite.
That's what makes it fun for me to write.
Yeah,
because I don't know what's going to happen. I got to keep writing.
That's right.
But I think of it like an outline, like a telephone pole. Anyway, you know, it's like a straight line, a beginning, a middle, and end. But when I write, it becomes this tree, and all these branches grow in areas I didn't expect, and I just follow them, and I let them take me where they will. Maybe it grows straight, and the ending's where I thought it would be, or maybe it's on a hillside, and the sun was on too far south or something, and the tree grew like this. And I don't care. I just let it take me where it will. It's funny because I found the original outline of the 6-book Demon War series, which became the 7-book Demon War series when I wrote it. But I found the original outline when I was going through some stuff that were going up to my archives at my alma mater. And I looked at the outline and I'm like, after book 1, nothing made sense because everything was different. Like the hero of book 5 had died in book 2. And it was just wild how different the story became. So to me, doing the story is fairly straightforward. I know what the conflict's going to be. I know who the bad guy's going to be. But for me, one of the first rejection letters I got, I'm from a town in central Massachusetts that was home to another very famous author by the name of Robert Cormier. And Cormier did I Am the Cheese, The Bumblebee Flies Anyway. The Chocolate War was one of his biggest books. He was a very influential and incredibly well-reviewed, required reading in many schools, young adult author of the 20th century. And he's a wonderful guy. And I didn't even know him. But when I got this horrible rejection letter, and I just called him. because his phone number, actual phone number, was in the movie I Am the Cheese.
Wow.
And so I just called him because he had come to talk to my class. He was like the most civic-minded person in history. He would show up everywhere, Boy Scout meetings, classes. You'd be having, or you'd be at the library and Bob Cormier come in and start talking to the kids. He's just an amazing guy. And he kept me on the phone for 2 hours. And the thing he told me that was most important to me is he said, character's more important than plot. He says, you can have the best story in the world, and if nobody cares about your characters, it's a mediocre book. But you make people really care about your characters, and you give them a hangnail, and you'll have the people on the edge of their seat. And I took that to heart. And so that's why in my books, that's one of the reasons why I change point of view so often in my books, because I don't want you to just care about the main character. I want you to care about the bad guy. I want you to care about the bad guy's henchman. I want you to care about the servant that comes in and feeds the bad guy. I want you to care about the dwarf. I want you to care about the elf. I want you to care about the halfling. So I try to get in the heads of the characters. So when I'm writing the book, I've got this general outline. I find my protagonist, and I make that character take me on a journey. And I see the world through the eyes of the characters in each section that I'm writing. And I let them take me and tell me what the next, who they are, how they think, what will, for them would be the next logical step. And that becomes the book. And I just let it roll from there. And I think that's why the characters work, because when I'm writing a character in my book, it's like I'm on the phone with that person and they're telling me a story. It's kind of creepy sometimes, but that it's the truth. And it works for me. Now, I know other authors that do it completely differently. I have a friend who used to do, his outlines were longer than my books. I'm not even kidding. They were like 90 pages, single space, 6 point, right? And it's like, dude, they don't pay you enough. But
how long does it typically take you to write a book?
How long does it take what?
How long average does it take you to write one of your books?
It depends. Is it the first book in the trilogy? Is it the second book in the trilogy? Is it the third book in the trilogy? If it's the first book in the trilogy, it's going to take me a little longer because I'm setting it up. Am I creating a new society? That takes time.
Yeah.
Am I using most of the same characters? That saves time. Right? Like people say, how could you have written that many books? Well, because I don't even look at the Drits books as the next book. It's almost like I'm writing the next season of the Drits television show.
Right.
In my head. Because the character's there, right? And it's funny because this is talk about being a pantser. When I'm writing a book and I realize one of the characters is out of character, instead of saying, boy, I got to fix that, I wonder what's wrong with the character. What's bugging? Why is she doing that? And that usually leads to some really cool side plots.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, so this is another question that I've seen peppered throughout the hour. Will Artemis and Jarl Axel ever be an item? They want the ship. They need the ship. They demand the ship, and they're wondering.
Are they talking about a romantic item? I take it.
Yeah, they want. They are shipping Artemis and Jarl Axel. There has
been some incredible fanfic about that, from what I understand. I don't know.
He's got.
I don't know that that's kind of Artemis's way, but Jarl Axel. I mean, one of my favorite scenes in the books was when Tiago Beanre was trying to impress Gromf, and he said, "I have ridden a dragon," and Gromf said, "I've eaten a dragon." And in the corner of this, Jarl Axel says, "I've slept with a dragon." And Jarl Axel's try anything, right? And so. I don't know. It's funny though. I love it now because, like in the Drits books, there's an openly gay character, and he just happens to be, and I think that's so cool.
Speaking of, I think it was Jarl Axel, but there was another, and I can't find it now. They were asking if the character is half dragon because he magic hoarding. And I can't find that question, but it was up a few times.
The question was who's Jarl Axel's father?
Yeah, is he half dragon? They want to know that. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Well, here's the thing: the dragons weren't around when I started, like in that format. the whole dragonkin thing is kind of a new thing in the realms. So Jarl Axel's a drow.
And you've heard it here.
But you know what? If in your mind, in your game, he's part dragon, go for it.
Well, you did an interview. I don't remember who it was, but you said that two people were arguing. Is it Drizzt? No, is it Drizzit? Is it Drizzt?
Yeah.
Is it Drizzit? And you're like, I'm not going to argue. I don't care. They're talking. It's great.
No,
Leave it
someone
alone.
asked me, is it Dritz or Drizzit? And I said, I never answer that question. And sometimes you'll see me, I'll say Drizzit. Other times I'll say Dritz. And they said, well, why won't you just give me an answer? And I said, because I always have this image of two kids in a high school hallway saying, it's Dritz, it's Drizzit, it's Dritz, it's Drizzit. Third kid comes up and says, what the hell are you talking about? You never read these books? And I win.
There you
go. The name I will tell you, I know that I get asked all the time is, how do you say the Panther's name?
Guinevere. Right?
Yeah, that's the Celtic spelling, it's the Celtic spelling for King Arthur's queen. So even though it says Guinevere, it's Guinevere.
There was a question about your favorite Arthurian legend character.
What's that?
There was a question about your favorite Arthurian legend character.
My favorite Arthurian legend character is probably, boy, that's a good question. Maybe Gawain. Nah, it's probably Guinevere.
Why Guinevere?
Because her flaw was so human. I like that. Besides, in the patriarchal stories of our past, the same reason I love Anne Boleyn, right? Anne Boleyn was a woman, and in that time, that means she got dealt a crappy hand. And she took that hand and turned it around on herself and got so many concessions and so many things and did so much for charity because she knew how to play the game and win. And I always find that fascinating. And so in the Arthurian stories, Guinevere was the underdog in essence. And she messed up. She was human.
Is the story...
Besides, when you say who's your favorite, which version are we talking?
Right.
Yeah. Are we talking the one with his Lancelot? Are we talking the one with his Galahad? Are we talking the one where Lancelot and Galahad are different people? Because they're all different, right? My favorite King Arthur books, by the way, are the Mary Stuart books. The Crystal Cave. Was it the Crystal Cave, The Last Enchantment, The Wicked Day, and I'm missing one. I can't remember offhand. But that's also where I got the name Guinevere for the panther. And by the way, in it means shadow, which I thought just fit the cat perfectly.
Perfect.
And this was in the early days of the realms when you could get away with that stuff because they were just trying to fill up this world. So they thought all these kind of references that were kind of half real world were cool. I'd never get away with it now.
Yeah.
Well, I would because I cheat. I don't tell anyone.
Is the story of the boardroom, I'm going to get this wrong, but is the story of the boardroom where they asked you to come up with a character and you just kind of spat out Drizzt Do'Urden? Is that a true story? Okay.
Yes, it absolutely is. And it wasn't a boardroom. I was working at Genrad in Concord, Massachusetts. I was a financial analyst working for the controller of the service department. And I had submitted my book, Echoes of the Fourth Magic, in January. When I talked to Mary Kirchhoff a couple of months later, she asked if I could set that book in the Forgotten Realms, but I couldn't because Echoes of the Fourth Magic starts in our world and goes to a future world. And the realms are their own world. So she asked me to audition. And so they sent me the only printed material they had in the Forgotten Realms, which was Doug Niles' book, Darkwalker on Moonshae. That's all they had at that time. And if you look at the map in the original Darkwalker on Moonshae, it's got like these tiny little islands. That's it. It's like 3 little islands. That's it. And the people in Doug's book kind of dominate the islands. So I thought they were doing another Dragonlance type thing where they wanted you to use characters that were already there, right? But the Dragonlance books were all about the core characters. And I didn't really want to do that. So what I did instead is I used one of Doug's characters who I thought was incredibly... Doug's a great writer. I love that book. One of the reasons I said yes is because how good that book was. course, I wasn't going to say no anyway, really, but that book made it easy. So I used Doug's character, Dareth, the Calamshite. And then he was going to introduce Wolfgar in my book. And the first book was the first draft of the book. What was the first title I came up with? I think it was The Tyrant of Icewind Dale. Wolfgar was supposed to be the main character. And so I had to write a sample chapter, and I wrote a chapter with Dareth and Wolfgar going into the Firbolg lair led by Bigrin. Okay? And because there were Firbolgs in the Moonshine Isles. And so I sent it to Mary. She said, absolutely, you win the edition, get working. And this is it was like July 11th, 1987. And I had just signed up for another master's English course at my local college. And she said, you won the audition. Congratulations. That's the good news. The bad news is I needed October 1st. This is July 11th. I have at the time I had a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old. My wife was 7 months pregnant.
Whoa.
I had to get a new car because you can't put 3 car seats in the back of a Mustang GT. They don't fit. I tried. I had to get a new apartment because my apartment was not going to hold us anymore. And I had to go to work every day a half hour to 45 minutes from home. So I was gone 9-10 hours a day working in finance. And she just said in 2.5 months, I need the first draft of the book. And so I said, no problem, because I really wanted it.
Of course you're going to do it.
So I sent in the sample chapter, and I was at work. It was near the end of the month now. And she calls me up and she says, Bob, I got a problem. And there's no cell phones, by the way. You're attached to the phone. This is for the young people out there who don't remember the old days when you had to walk to school both ways and it was uphill and you had to get off the couch and change the TV by hand. Dang it. And but she calls me up and she says, Bob, I got a problem. I got to go to a meeting with the sales force. And this is an incredibly important meeting because I have to get them excited. If I get them excited about your book, you're going to sell more books. But I need you can't use Dareth. And I said, yeah, I don't want to use Dareth. Oh, I skipped the part. When I first did that, she said, well, why are you in the Moonshine Isles? Doug's writing there. We don't want you there. And I looked at the book and I said, you want me in the water? Because that was the whole map. So they sent me Ed Greenwood's original maps, which came to me in a box of 8.5 by 11 photocopied sheets that had no numbers, no legend. Some of them had like a line. Some had a line with a tree. Some had a line with a tree and some mountains.
And detailed.
I'm working in my office. My boss comes in and he says, hey, I'm going to lunch with Dale and Nino. These are the big 3 of the service department. Come on, let's go. And I'm like, I got too much work to do. So as soon as he left, I pushed all my furniture out into the hallway, took off my tie, tied it around my head like a bandana. And I got on the floor with these maps and I lost track of time. And I hear behind me, what are you doing? I turn around and it's my boss and the head of service. And I told them what I was doing. So they took off their ties and jumped on the floor with me. And we put Ed's maps together.
Wow.
And so now I see the realms and the Moonshine Isles, these tiny little islands right over here in this gigantic Forgotten Realms. And so okay, let's reset the book. And it's like, okay, where do you want to go? I said, let me go here. And you can't go there. Those are the Bloodstone lands. And Doug's doing a series of modules there. I said, I thought Doug was in the Moonshine Isles. They said he is, but he's doing modules for the game over there. So we're going to leave that alone. I said, okay, well, I'll go here. Well, that's Cormier, and that's kind of Ed's area. We're going to leave that for Ed. Okay. And I'm going here, Callanport. Well, Troy Denning is doing something down there right now. We're kind of leave that for him. And it took us like 2 weeks. And finally I looked at the map and there's these mountains and there's a little line near the Sea of Moving Ice. And I said, see that little line behind the mountains up there? She goes, yeah, it's probably a typo. And I said, well, no, now that's Icewind Dale. Let me do my book. So I'm all set to go, ready to start writing. I'm at work one day. I'm getting ready for month end. And my phone rings and it's Mary, and she says, "Bob, I'm late for this meeting with the sales force, and you can't, you can't. I've got your sample chapter, and you can't use Dareth." I said, "That's great. I don't want to use Dareth. I want to do my own characters. I already told you that." And she says, "Well, yeah, but I can't use Dareth in the presentation, so I need a sidekick for Wolfgar." And I'm like, all right, well, give me a week. I'll come up with something. And she said, Bob, I got to go to a meeting and I need a sidekick for Wolfgar. So I looked at the clock. It was almost noon. And I said, Mary, I won't take lunch for you. How's that? They weren't paying me that much, by the way, at that time. I said, I won't take lunch. Okay. I'll come up with a character. I'll call you back. She said, no, Bob, you don't understand. I'm late for a meeting. I'm looking across the hall and they're all looking at me angrily. And I need a sidekick for Wolfgar. Okay. So off the top of my head, I said, a drow elf. And there was this long pause, and she says, a drow. I said, yeah, a drow. And then I'm thinking about it a little bit, and I said, yeah, a drow ranger. That'll be cool. A drow ranger. And I'm like, yeah. She said, Bob, a drow ranger. I said, nobody's ever thought of that. Let's do a drow ranger. That'll be cool. And she says, it's probably a reason nobody's done that before, Bob. And I said, no, a drow ranger. And so now it's starting to spin. My head's starting to spin. And all of a sudden I'm seeing this character. And finally she just says, all right, look, I got to go to this damn meeting. Do you have a name? And I said, Drits the Warden of Dammon the Show's been on the 9th house of Benza Baranzan. She said, what? I said, I have no idea. She said, what's a Menzo Baranzan? I said, it must be a city. Or an island. And she said, all right, can you spell it? And I said, nope. And she said, all right, well, since it's a sidekick, I'll let you get away with it. And that's how he came to be. And I started writing the book, and the first scene I started writing at that point was him. It was Drits running across the tundra when he got jumped by the Yetis. And I knew, like 2 pages in, this isn't Wolfgar's book. This guy's way more interesting. I can do so much more with this guy. And he just sang to me from that day forward. And it worked. I don't know why. I don't know how, but it worked.
So Kayleen, that moment is responsible for why we had to practice so much to get all the pronunciation right before the show started.
I tried, man. I tried me some pronunciations. I think I nailed them.
You sound like Ice-T. Only he didn't think he nailed them.
That is so cool how in like a moment you just had this inspiration of a character, and the more that you connect with that character, the more it kind of blossoms and grows, and it became a huge series that so many people, strangers, thousands of people really relate to and connect with. All that stuff.
Artemis and Sherry showed up at the end of the Crystal Shed because I was hoping they'd give me another book. I had no idea who he was. That's how I write characters generally, because what happens is I write the character, and now through anecdotes and through little bits of the story and getting into the head of the character is how I learned who this person is. It's like meeting a person to me. And I think with Drits, it got accelerated because after the Halfling's Gem, when we went back, I started doing those essays. The Drits essays weren't in the Icewind Dale trilogy when I first wrote them. I put those in later. I think when the Science Fiction Book Club picked it up, they wanted something extra, so I added the essays because I started them in the Dark Elf trilogy and I've been doing them ever since. And those essays, when I went to do the Dark Elf trilogy, I wanted to do it first person. But I love writing battle scenes, and battle scenes are really hard first person if there's more than one person fighting, because if I'm fighting here, I can't be looking at what's going on over there or I'm dead. So I kind of decide, well, I'll just do first person for the intro to each section of the book, and I'll have Drits, ruminating, writing to himself in a journal or whatever, trying to make sense of the world. And I think that's why the character became my favorite. I think it's why a lot of people came to really care about the character too. So it worked. I don't know why.
And the essays are just some of the best parts of the entire series. I mean, you get into Drit's head. I feel like I get into your head, but maybe I'm lying a little bit.
No, you get into my heart more than my head, because when I'm writing them, I have to be very cognizant of the fact that I'm writing about somebody that has a different point of view than I do, that has seen things that I haven't, that has lived through things that I haven't, and that will make mistakes that I know he's making, but he doesn't know he's making.
Right.
So, but ethically speaking, yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I think, you're asking why does Drits work? I think one of the reasons Drits works is not because he has the biggest swords, it's because he has the biggest heart. And he's going to do what he thinks is right, no matter the cost, at all times. And that's who I wish I had the courage to be.
All right.
Well, you're inspiring people. You've already inspired Xander72 to want to write again. Your method that you described earlier is the way he usually writes, and now he wants to keep going with it.
Well, good. I love hearing things like that. I love when people read my books and want to go read other books, not just mine, but other books. They want to become a reader or they want to become a writer. I love that stuff. It means I've touched someone's life in a positive way. Although a lot of people who become writers probably wind up cursing me more often than not. But in the end, they'll be glad because it is a curse. Being a writer is, you know it, right, Steve?
Yeah. It's hard work.
It's as much a curse as it is a blessing. When I'm writing a book, I go to bed with it in my head. I wake up with it in my head. I'm driving and I don't know how I get to where I'm going half the time because I'm writing while I'm driving. I'm downstairs weightlifting and I'm writing and I forget how many reps I've done until I can't lift the bar off my chest anymore. That's like help. It's a curse.
Oh yeah.
Blessing.
It's like, how do you keep all those stories in that giant world in your head? I'm sorry, who are you again?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That is exactly right. And I love it when people come up to me now, and this has been going on for a while, especially since I'm getting old now. People come up and they say, a guy came up to me once, goes, that scene in Streams of Silver when the belt buckle undid with the knife. Oh my God, that was, and he's going on and on and on. I'm like, oh, you like that? That's great. That's great. And he's like, when I read this book, it just has shades of Milton in it. And was that an inspiration to you? I'm like, of course. Yeah, I'm glad you caught that. I didn't even remember the belt buckle. It's like, I always get accused of brilliance I don't have. I love it.
There you go. It's instinctual.
Fan saying, Bob, you sucked me into the realms and I'm forever thanking you for it.
Hi, Kelly.
Your series inspired me to write. That's from Anastasia.
Love it. Thank you.
And Drits was definitely my gateway to the realms.
Yeah. Drits the gateway drug.
And I've seen a few mentions of this. Everyone's asking about Malice.
Malice, Matron Malice.
Yeah.
That's a cool name for a drowned.
It is. It was fantastic.
Please, you. Everybody wants me to bring everybody back.
No. Kill him.
It's funny because one of my favorite books in the Drits series, the one I'm writing is always my favorite when I'm working on a book. So this always changes. But I really love like the Generations Trilogy as a trilogy. I love what I was able to accomplish in the realms, for the drow, understanding the drow. I really love the Homecoming series because it's the fitting end of the legend of Drits. And now we go on from there. But my two favorite books, individual books in the series, are Homeland, because I got to create the whole society of the Drow underground. That was an amazing experience. It was so much fun. It's based on the 5 families of New York from The Godfather, by the way. And then the second one would be The Companions. And the reason The Companions is one of my favorites is because I did something you're never supposed to do. And it scared the hell out of me. But see, what happened was when they did 4th edition, we were at a meeting. I flew out to Gen Con and I had the script for 4th edition D&D and what it was going to do to the Forgotten Realms on the plane. And everybody on the plane, most of the people on the plane knew who I was because it was a plane that was going to Milwaukee from Boston for Gen Con. And so most of the people on that plane were Gen Con people. And I probably had seen them a dozen times. So if people knew who I was, and boy, they know I can swear when I was reading that because I was swearing like a state trooper. So I get out there and we go into the meeting and I'm like, you don't advance the world 100 years. You don't have to do that. Just do a plague, wipe out big areas of the world if you're trying to scrub it clean and trying to kind of cleanse the lore, if you will. Just do a plague. That'll work. Or drop a nuclear bomb on Cormier or something. But don't advance the world. You're giving people a reason to not read anymore. Big argument. But, I had no say. It's their world. I'm leaving and Ed Green was next to me. We're leaving and he looks up at me and he says, Bob, what the hell are we going to do? Because he was no happier than I was. And I said, well, Ed, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to start thinking about how we're going to put things back together in a few years. Because a few years from now, they're going to come back to us and they're going to say, we need to do something about the realms. And he says, yep. I said, so start thinking long and hard of how you repair the realms. And that's going to include bringing back characters. And so we came up with these ideas, and sure as heck, a few years later, I'm at Gen Con, and I did my afternoon with Bob seminar. And after it was over, James Wyatt sitting in. He said, "Bob, stay behind, will you?" And everybody left, and James is sitting there in front. He goes, "We got a problem." And I went and sat down. He says, we got to do something. We got to fix the realms. And we don't know what we're going to do. I said, "Sit back down. I'll tell you." Ed and I had been talking about this for 5 years. And so when I did the companions, now I have to reintroduce Catti-brie and the companions who were dead. You can't bring back dead characters and get away with it, because of course the oldest thing is if characters can be resurrected, is there any tension, right? Mm-hmm. But here I am, and I still had so many stories I wanted to tell that, damn it, I was going to do it anyway. So when I wrote the companions, I had Catti-brie coming back as a continuation. Now, these were characters that were going to be reborn in different parts of the world as babies, reborn, but with full consciousness. So it's kind of that, if I could go back to high school, and if I knew then what I know now, what I would do different, they got to do it. So wow. Catti-brie, it's a continuation because she's on a mission from her god. She is going to, she knows why she's coming back, so she's coming back with purpose. And it's kind of a continuation of her storyline. But with Regis, he doesn't want to be Regis again, because he always felt like he was a tag-along and he was a burden on the companions of the hall. So in his crib, this sentient little kid who can't even control his arms yet knows damn well that he's going to train and train and train and train, and he is not going to be a liability this time. He is going to be worthy of being one of the heroes of the companion of the hall. I loved writing him. Everyone says, "Oh, Spider," because he was Spider Paraffin. They said Spider's the coolest character, and that really worked. And I knew it was going to, because I loved writing this story for Regis. And then Brunner coming back was completely different than the other two. Brunner was the fan who was going to be mad about resurrecting characters. So Brunner walked around with a chip on his shoulder, thinking me coming back, damn that girl for convincing me to come back, because this invalidates all I went through and the glorious death I had even. So what's the point if I can just come back? So I got to look at all three of those things while I'm writing a book. And it was magical, and it was so much fun, and it was so challenging to do it. And, I talk about me being a pantser. Something happened at the end of the companions. The characters climb Kelvin's cairn. They find Drits and dying up on top of Kelvin's cairn. And if I'm ruining this, it's your own fault. The book's like 10 years old or something. And Guinevere puts her ears back and growls. And that's the moment I knew. While I'm writing this is the end, the last page of the freaking book, is when I realized the choice Wulfgar had made. I didn't even know that Wulfgar had not gone into the pond until that moment. Goosebumps. It was so much fun. It's so much fun when those things happen. So when Wulfgar now is living his life in the realms, he's completely different. Wulfgar had 100-plus-year-old life. He had kids. He had grandkids. He fulfilled everything you're supposed to do in this life. And so when he came back, now he's this young guy again, and he is a complete hedonist. He is just going to do whatever he wants to do that's not hurting other people, period. Fortunately for him, he meets Penelope, who has the same mindset, and kind of teaches him that it's okay sometimes to just be about you. And it's been an interesting ride because of that book. So that's like my second favorite, or maybe even my favorite Drits book.
Sounds like you completely unleashed your creativity, and you're kind of experiencing the story as the words come to you, which is nuts.
It was just so much fun, that book in particular. But yeah, I do that all the time. To me, I don't know what's going to happen on the next page a lot of times.
You were just talking about Regis. Laura asked, and I think this is what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Regis.
Yeah, I just answered that. He didn't want to be a tag-along.
Yeah.
Plus, I told you earlier, my favorite character of any comedy character I've ever written is Oliver de Barros, the Highway Halfling from the Crimson Shadow series. And Regis became more Oliver-like.
Right.
Do we have any last minute questions we want to throw up? Are we closing it? Are we going?
Loads of
What's going on?
questions.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
okay. Not to
Bob-
say there are not tens of thousands of questions that we could touch on, but which ones are new questions? Do you want to answer some more, Bob?
Sure, I'm having
We
fun.
don't. Okay, good. I was like,
I mean-
yeah, you might have wanted to have started sleeping 20 minutes ago. We wouldn't.
Yeah, because
I've been
we're
sleeping.
officially 25 minutes over. But if you want to continue, your fans are still here.
Go ahead.
They've got their questions.
Okay, so Joku Temple says, Bob, you once said the story you always wanted to write was Jarl Axel and
Zach the fan.
Zach the Fame.
Zach
Yeah,
Nabin.
thank you, Adventures. Did this last trilogy scratch that itch?
That was the 6 sections of the 3 books that I just wrote.
Yeah.
Yes, that itch is scratched. I don't think I'll be going back in time with them again. Zach the Fan was an interesting character, though, because, again, a character that was brought back because he was kind of the impetus for everything that happened in Generations, was the fact that at the end of Hero, Zach the Fan came back. He had been dead for 100 and almost 200 years. And I got a lot of angry letters about him because people loved him so much. And he came back and he was kind of a racist. And people were like, why'd you make him a racist? And I said, because of my dad, who wasn't. What do you mean? Because my dad was one of the most progressive people for his time. The World War II vet, wounded in World War II. We couldn't say Salvatore. We had to say Salvatore because we're American. He was Mr. True Blue American. But he was very forward-thinking for his time. So, like when Muhammad Ali got in so much trouble in the 60s, my dad supported him and said, listen to what he's saying. Listen to this man. He's brilliant. When Tommy Smith and Juan Carlos raised the black gloves at the 68 Olympics, I was 10 years old watching the Olympics with my dad. I looked over at my dad and I said, you could see he was tearing up a little bit. And I thought he was like pissed because World War II vet, right? And here they are protesting as the national anthem's playing at the Olympics. And I remember I asked him, I said, you mad at them? And he said, Bobby, I didn't go to fight in Europe for a piece of cloth. I went for what it stands for. Watch this. This is what it stands for. My dad was a really cool guy. But if I took my dad from like the 1960s and 70s and was able to resurrect him and drop him into 2020, he wouldn't know what to make of the world. And he would not be considered, woke, if you will. He's a different person. And you see this all the time. I mean, you see this with older politicians when people go back in time and try, he said this in 1973. The world was a different place.
That's right.
So Zach the Fane was Archie Bunker when he came back. He didn't know what to make. He comes back. This is a guy who grew up and the only thing he ever knew was drow, right? What did he see other than drow that weren't slaves or people they were about to kill?
Mm-hmm.
And now he comes back and his son is married to a human who's pregnant. What the heck is he supposed to think about that? So he's trying to be nice about it. He's trying to get it, but his sensibilities haven't caught up with that yet. And so that's why, in that series, a big part of that series is his growth.
And it allows you to kind of wrestle with those themes too. You didn't have a character to speak that voice in your story. You wouldn't be able to have characters respond to it. The plot kind of change him and affect him, and for you to explore that idea and wrestle it.
Right. And that's the whole point of writing the books, right? To explore the ideas that pop up.
Right.
So you wrote, I love you, R.A. Salvatore, from Galactic Scholar. You wrote, of course, Vector Prime. You wrote Attack of the Clones. You got to do the Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Do you have any other genres that you would like to write in, but you're like, I don't want to do that because I need the money to do that? I mean, like, is there anything that, money aside, jobs aside, you would just go, I want to write?
First of all, it's like I've been contemplating retirement for about 5 years now. So get that aside. Star Wars is fantasy. It's not science fiction.
Well, I agree with that. But
it's space opera is fantasy.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of books I wanted to write, and I've never gotten around to writing them. That would be set more in modern times, and would be more science fiction-y, and just more books about modern times, if you will.
Yeah.
But I'm having fun, so
yeah.
Maybe.
You always gotta have fun.
Kind of the point.
All right, Griffin Barber asks, any mistakes you've made that you regret or alternatively ended up in awesomeness?
Oh, well, of course. If you're talking about in the books, of course. To the first part, anyway. It's hard to go back and read my own books because I always read them like an editor, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I had done this instead. But that never ends. That never ends. If you play that game with yourself, it never ends because now you're doing 6 of one, half a dozen of another, and that's never going to end. So sure.
All right, here's a good question that I'm sure a lot of people would like to know. Hey, Bob, by Living the Dream Off Grid, I've had the pleasure to have you sign my books. Are you planning another signing tour in person?
Right now, I'm planning on staying safe.
There you go.
And
so post all the crazy.
I'm looking. I was supposed to be the guest of honor at Gen Con this year. And of course, I jinxed them, and they didn't have Gen Con this year. But if Gen Con goes next year, and we've got vaccines, and I feel safe, I'll be at Gen Con next year. Absolutely, and I do plan on getting back out there. In fact, probably more than I would have planned, because one of the things that's happened with all of this is you begin to realize that even some things that you didn't realize were important become important. So, like, I'm really looking forward to the next time I go to Disney. Because it'll be the best time I've ever gone to Disney if I'm going there post-COVID and I feel safe. Because I'll appreciate it so much more. And I feel that way about the conventions and the book signings, too. So, yeah, I'll be back out on the road. I don't know when, but...
I was hoping to be the guest of dishonor at
Oh, we don't know who for you coming on tonight, whether it's COVID or what, but the 150 people who are watching you right now and us, we are very thankful that you shared this evening.
Man, at one point that number was up to 170 something.
Nice.
So yeah,
that's a good number.
Thank you, sir. It's a great time. This was a dream come true for me. I feel like the biggest fanboy on earth, but thank you.
Well, you're quite welcome, and it was a lot of fun. You guys made it easy. So,
yay! Y'all heard it here. We made answering questions easy. All right, thank you so much, RA. Everyone out in the store and in the live chat. I must say, because Fenny is he's gonna go crazy. Malice, we did touch on that. I'm putting it up in the air. I don't think Malice is coming back. I'm just gonna say, based off what we were talking about,
back at this time.
Fans.
Look, I just finished the trilogy and I don't know what's next. But for Malice to come back.
Hey, can you show us those awesome hats that they could go buy on arisalvastore.com?
Yes. Well, they can't buy these at arisalvastore.com right now. These, we have a new Drits hat. And we have a cool one I like better. Guinevere.
So awesome.
And these are at heroesandvillains.com. Heroes Villains.
Heroes Villains.
HEROES. I got it right on my other screen. Heroesvillains.com. And it's the new line they're doing, and there are going to be a lot of Drits and Guinevere.
If you happen to be by a spirit Halloween, you can grab Icing Death and Twinkle, although they are called Icy Death and Twinkle Sword, which is super lame, but we'll go with it anyway.
Sword. It's close enough.
Alrighty then.
And with that, thank you so much to all the people watching, all the people hitting questions. If we didn't hit your question, if we didn't answer your question, I am so sorry. We did our best. We tried to hit as many as we could. Thank you so much, Bob, for coming on, sharing so many awesome things. I mean, we've got to learn things deeper about the characters, the stories that a lot of people may not have known, which is always a treat. So as you said earlier, you can find him at rasalvastore.com. Where else can...
Christmas specials running soon.
There you go. You got to get those hats. Those hats are amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah,
where
we'll
else
be doing. We're supposed to be doing something through the store with this company that's doing
Cool.
the yeah. So yeah.
All right. Last
I'm
question.
just
Are you
thrilled. I
open-
mean, now I've got the Funko Pop Drits. And
So cool.
They
man.
just announced the Drits action figure that just came out, which is really cool. The Drits and Guinevere action figures, and there are two. I think there's two different versions that are out, and so many things. All of a sudden, it's kind of cool. And they did the Rime of the Frost Maiden, which is awesome. Back to Icewind Dale again, and they got the Icewind Dale dice coming out, and I'm like my own little brand now.
Give merch. All the merch. So there was that one question. Are you open to answering emails? So like if people were to not creepy stalk you?
I try to answer all of my Facebook PMs, but I fall way behind. And something weird. I went on the other day and I said, all right, I got a little time now. I want to do some PMs. And like PMs from like a year ago showed up that weren't showing up before. So I'm trying to I'm constantly playing catch up on them. But yes, I do try to answer all of the. It used to be easier when it was leathers, even though leathers are harder to write because I would get a few hundred or whatever, and over the course of a year. And now it's a lot harder. And I do have an email, but I prefer Facebook. I think for that, it's just an easier format than email.
All right, so y'all heard it here. Send him a PM. Don't panic if he doesn't reach you within a year, because sometimes it gets lost in the proto-phase.
I won't be that bad again. I don't think. It's been a busy year and then a tough year, but on Facebook, it's the account that's my professional account that I answer is capital R period capital A. The other one is R lowercase a. That's my personal account. People buzz me there too, but I prefer to keep that one more.
All right, you're going to contact him. Capital R, capital A, Salvatore. All right. Yes. And with that, be sure to check us out next week. Hit that subscribe button, ding the little bell, do all the things. Know what more we shall have for you in store. I don't know why I just talked slightly Yoda-ish, but anyway. Be sure to check us out next week for more reading, writing, and everything in between. Stop shaking your head at me.
It was definitely some kind of Asian, insensitive Asian Yoda.
I don't even know what I don't know. It popped out. That's what we have. Thank you so much.
That was her audible edition.
She won't be replacing Mark Thompson anytime soon.
Hey,
for Yoda.
That's okay. I'm not mad at you, Fowett.
Victor Bavine may be sick of Drits by now. The poor guy.
He's done a lot.
He spent like thousands of hours in the studio doing Drits. It's really cool.